even though they're going to end up with a situation in which they cannot necessarily be reading the Torah or have a proper shaliach tzibur, still that takes precedent ve'im lav. But if he's a regular ordained rabbi, but it's not necessarily something that could be special for them as a moreh horaot, is not a rav gadol b'torah u'baki be'hora'ah, then shaliach tzibur takes precedence. That's more important, as we're going to see the reason. The Mishna Berurah writes, the reason that the Rav is more important, even though that the mitzvah of tefillah is going to be lacking, it's not going to be complete the way it should be, because they don't have shaliach tzibur. Learning Torah, having the proper guidance from a Rav, adif minat tefillah, is more important and vital for the future of the community than it is the tefillah. Because if you have Torah, you'll have tefillah afterwards. If you only have hazanut, you don't have proper guidance for the community, then it's not going to necessarily have continuity. He says, I am emphasized in Biur Halacha how important it is every city to have a moreh horaot, a tameh chacham, which could guide the community in learning and in their halachic inquiries and so on. V'katav b'tshuvot Chatam Sofer, Rabbi Moshe Sofer in Chatam Sofer writes in Orach Chaim Siman Resh Vav, the kol anshe ha'ir mechuyavim litel hazeh. Everyone in the city is obligated to participate in the financial support of this concept, for them to have a Rav of the city, a posek, a Rosh Hashiva, someone that could guide and direct the growth and the learning of the town. No one could say, well, I learn on my own. I suffice. I am sophisticated enough that I could do it on my own. He can't say that he has to participate in that because of the need of the city. The very least is, even if he is correct that he really doesn't need it and he's self-sufficient, but he has to be part of the tzibur in this, because this is one of the basic primary needs of a community. Just like a city that doesn't have a mikveh, you cannot live in the city. So even if this person does not have a personal need for mikveh, still has to pay for it, because this is a primary basic need of a town. But if he's not a big Rav, he's not a big posek, he's not something special, since he anyways cannot paskin a question, he needs other Rabbanim. So, well, other people in town could also ask from other Rabbanim, and he's not anything specific. Therefore, of course, Shaliach Tzibur comes first. And Maran writes in next Seif, in Seif Chafei, once somebody is the Shaliach Tzibur, you don't easily take him off from his job. Let's say someone says, oh, I think he is going, he has extramarital relationship, or what else. There are always people who are public figures. There are always rumors around them. Of course, rumors do not cause a person to lose their job, but you have to verify it, try to verify it. And if it is verified, immediately, of course, you get rid of them, and they will be publicly shamed to losing their job. That is for sure true. But you can't say, well, this person, someone said something about them, and therefore let's just get somebody that nobody says anything about them. Aside from the fact that that's a difficult thing to find, anyone that's a public figure, as good as they may be, or you always have a certain percentage of people who would, freedom of speech, they'll don't like the person and they'll say things that they would say. So therefore, just because of a renun, we don't take him off his job unless we find a real psul in them. Now, the Ramah goes to discuss details of what is considered psul, what is not considered psul, and some of them are going to come as a surprise to you. So he starts by saying, just because somebody said, someone says, I saw him with a goya, and so on, or shemasar adam, he slandered someone to the authorities, which both of those would be, of course, grave transgressions, we don't act on it until we have a proper testimony. But as soon as you have testimony, then immediately we take action, and he will lose his job. If a shliach tzibur happens to also be a shochet, many times it would happen like this. So a person, think about it in your minds as a resume, right? Back then, to get a job, you had to be, the more you had on your resume, the better it would be. Imagine if you want to hire a shochet for town, you have to support a whole family for him to come to town, right? If you want a chazan, also you have to support his family. So if you would be a shochet and a chazan, you would have an upper hand, because the community would pay the same money and get 2 for 1, or a little bit more, but we certainly less than supporting 2 families, and therefore you would be on top of the list. So many people would do that. But if you do that, says the Ramah, you cannot get up by the Amud with your bloody clothing and dirty hands and smelly garments to be the shaliach tzibur. That's not the proper conduct for the tzibur. You have to have completely clean and proper clothing. If he doesn't want to change from his shchita clothing to a proper clothing outfit, then we fire him from being a shaliach tzibur. He can't be shaliach tzibur when he is not, he is not clean and proper for the conduct of shaliach tzibur. So now, imagine if somebody has older kids. Shaliach tzibur has older kids, and the kids, unfortunately, went off the path, and they became famous atheists or people who are known to do grave sins. So do you take him off, the father off being a shaliach tzibur, because his kids are not proper? So it says, Chacham Obadia, the sons don't represent the father. If the father did everything that he was supposed to do, so that does not disqualify him from being the shaliach tzibur. Unfortunately, sometimes you have the great tzaddikim that have, very negative offsprings. Chizkiyahu Melech Israel had Menashe. You find this many times, many examples of it in Jewish history. So therefore, that does not disqualify for shaliach tzibur, the father, from being shaliach tzibur. But if he caused it, for instance, he sent them to public school. If a shaliach tzibur sends his kids to public school, and he could do otherwise, he lives in North Beverly Hills, and he drives a Bugatti, and now his kids are in public school to save money. So of course that Chacham speaks very strongly against, and it says that person cannot be the shaliach tzibur, because he's deliberately ruining the future of his kids. That shows that he does not care about averot and about doing the mitzvot, and therefore he cannot be the shaliach of the tzibur. Now, someone that his wife does not cover her hair, right? Chabadia writes, you can't be a shaliach tzibur. Now, you have to take with a grain of salt, because we had Rashi Yeshivot that came to, and I'm not going to mention names, but very, very big people that came from Lita, and in Lita, in Lithuania, it was very difficult to have a woman that covered their hair. Unfortunately, became a very big Makat Medina. So not everything could be judged in the same way. Of course, this is something that needs a moreh hora'ah, a proper psak. If a person's status would be of such that he can't be shaliach tzibur just because his wife does not cover her hair. If he doesn't care about it, then it is something that passes him from being shaliach tzibur. He cannot be shaliach tzibur if he doesn't care about covering hair, because that's a mitzvah deoraita. And if you don't care about mitzvah deoraita, then, but if she doesn't listen to him, he became baalet tshuva, and she just doesn't do it for whatever reason. So then it's not asur to have him as the shaliach tzibur. Now, Kaf HaChaim says in the example that the Mishna Berurah gives here, Mishna Berurah says, if someone on the Ramah that we just mentioned, that if someone was there is some slander about him, that he has been seen with a goya and so on. So Mishna Berurah writes on that. Even though that we don't believe the rumors and we don't fire him, but we take the rumors seriously enough to appoint a committee to research the subject and see what's happening. And that his daughter cheated on her husband, that person you cannot, the father of that girl, you cannot appoint lechatchila as the shaliach tzibur, but if this happened after he already is the official shaliach tzibur, it seems, says the Chafetz Chaim, would seem that we don't invalidate him because of his daughter. Now, Kaf Chaim says,
how would it be different from what we said before about what his kids are doing and not a reflection on him necessarily?
Right. So we mentioned, right? We mentioned on that the first element that lechatchila you don't put him. So and that is the Chacham Obadia that we just mentioned, right? That for regular sins, regular things, we don't do it unless he caused it, right? But the issues of morality in their core, which again, cheating on one's husband is considered something of a grave transgression for someone that's frum, and that happening, that's not something that's equivalent of just a regular avera. So we take it a little bit more seriously. But nevertheless, the Mishna Berurah says perhaps if he has been the shaliach tzibur, you leave him be. And Kaf Chaim disagrees with that. Kaf Chaim says even if he has been the shaliach tzibur, we fire him because again doesn't have a good name. The family doesn't have a good name in the community. If you have a different shaliach tzibur, we choose someone else. And Kaf Chaim was as far as saying that even if the daughter that was mezaneh was not married, the original case is a married woman. But so even if it was not married, but she became a zonah, so she goes with different people, that by itself would be also a reason not to have the father as the shaliach tzibur, because certain things, again, the Chazal understand, certain things come from the family, certain things, are part and parcel of the upbringing of the family. And if you see something like that happens, like the Gemara says in the end of Masechet Sukkah, Gemara says, "Shuta de'enuka v'shuka," or the abud or the imeh. When you have a certain conduct from the child in the public that roots from the family and so on. Sometimes you have, like the Ramban says, "Shoresh porei rosh v'la'ana." Certain things do come from the family, and therefore it's important to have that clarity. And the good name of a shaliach tzibur is something essential to the whole concept of shaliach tzibur, and therefore we take it very seriously. So says the Ramah, how about a person that listens to non-Jewish music, right? So that's something that of course is a very controversial topic in this generation. Unfortunately, when you live within the galut, there are certain aspects of the non-Jewish life that creep in to Jewish chambers as well, and Jewish versus non-Jewish music has been always one of those elements in the exile when the Jews take the culture of the host country in. This is one of those challenges that comes with it. Now, before that, we mentioned that if you have witnesses on this person, you fire him. The Mishna Berurah says, if he does tshuva publicly, then that is sufficient, says the Mishna Berurah, not to fire him from his post as a shaliach tzibur. But if he did bemezid, if he did the avera knowingly and deliberately, then tshuva does not necessarily help, because this person is considered en pirko na'eh. He's not a person with a proper background, and that we already discussed. That is invalidates him for being the shliach tzibur. So if he did something, a sin, b'shogeg, that's one thing. But if he did it b'mezid, if he did it deliberately, that's something that we take very, very seriously. Now, the shliach tzibur that became drunk a number of times and disrespected the Torah, the Kaf HaChaim says that is also sufficient, that he doesn't have a good name and you fire him from being the shliach tzibur. Shliach tzibur that was put into this, excommunication. He got a nidui from the bedin. So it depends. If he got a nidui because of the averot that he did, because of the sins that he committed, then he's not even mistaref leminyan. He's not counted as 1 of 10. So of course he cannot be the shliach tzibur. So it really depends what the reason was that he was put into cherem, as something to be mindful of. Now, the fact that we said that a shochet cannot stand to become shliach tzibur with dirty clothing, says the Kaf HaChaim that not only he can't be dirty, but the begadim of shliach tzibur have to be the most proper of the begadim. You can't have any stains on them. You can't have any dirt on them. It has to be clean, upstanding, proper clothing of based on the minhag of the community, what is considered a formal clothing. That is what he has to have, and has to be completely spotless and clean. Now, shliach tzibur shemitoch chol yo leonso I efshar lenakot liot tahor mikre laila. If a person, because of his age, because of his certain sickness, he constantly has a similar emission, and it's hard for him to keep a clean body, says the Mishna Berurah, says Chafetz Chaim, Efshar b'yamim noraim yesh likor bo sheitpol. You should tell him, like, shliach tzibur has to be tahor. You have to go to mikveh, and at least on the yamim noraim is a time that we could be very strong with him about that, to make sure that he is cleansing himself spiritually, he's going to mikveh, and so on and so forth. At the very least, he should have clean clothing, not something that halachically would be challenging with having zera on it. So says the Kaf HaChaim on that the importance of Tevilat Ezra, we already spoke about it before, that at least the shliach tzibur should, during the course of the year even, should be very much mindful of that, and be a clean, tahor individual representing the tzibur in front of Hashem. This continues with the non-Jewish songs and so on, is something that we will, B'ezras Hashem, discuss in the days to come.